The Texans have been forced into an impossible situation. The NFL draft has concluded, and looking at what does this team need, there could be some potential signings, including past players signing with new teams, and that makes me wonder, do the Texans kind of point out the obvious hole in offensive guard? They didn't draft anyone on the guard position. They took one offensive lineman in Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota. Great trade up in round 2, but it's just something to look out for because free agency is highly utilized, especially if teams don't get the positions that they need in the draft. So we're going to talk about kind of what does this team look like for the 2025 season. But if you're new to Texans Digest, 88% of you are not subscribed. So if you want to stay up to date with all the Texans news, this is the place to be. Really appreciate all the support on all the videos. You guys have been crushing it. So again, comment down below thoughts on just who would they potentially sign? What are we looking to do? Because I think it's kind of funny. Robert Woods, former Texan, Texans news, right? He signed with the Steelers. It makes me think, what does Nick Caserio do? Does he just leave it as it is? And I wouldn't be surprised if he just said, yeah, well, I mean, our team's pretty good. So looking at the starters, I mean, there is so much to love from the Texans. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if nobody was signed. Well, I'll be completely honest. You have your running back room is kind of complete. Joe Mixon, Dameon Pierce, and you just drafted Woody Marks, so that's nice. Nico Collins, they're definitely not signing a receiver. We talked about back in the offseason, Tyler Lockett was available. Now he signed with the Titans, but there's still receivers available. Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper. If you wanted to, if you didn't get the guys you wanted to, you could have signed some. Instead, you go out and get Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, and I am ecstatic about that. But it also makes me think, hey, we're going into training camp right now. There's a couple positions that need to be cut. And that makes like you have 4 or 5 tight ends right now. Schultz, Brevin Jordan, Cade Stover, Irv Smith, and just Luke Lackey you just drafted. So there's a lot of positions that may not make the team in terms of, again, who do you want to keep in terms of undrafted free agents and all the roster sizes and what that nature would look like. And that would be the problem with signing a guy in maybe a Brandon Sheriff at the top of the leaderboard in terms of offensive linemen. There's you could also get Will Hernandez or maybe somebody else. But honestly, looking at the offensive line right now, really there's not much to fill. Ariante Ursary might just start, not to start the season. I feel like Cam Robinson starts. Ursary will work his way in. But, I mean, that's kind of what you look for. Now, with the free agents in terms of Woods signing with the Steelers and thinking about, okay, what would the Texans potentially sign? It really wouldn't make sense to sign anybody right now, and the only reason I say that is because we have about 5 guys from the draft who will probably start day 1, which is pretty crazy, but looking at it, I mean, you have Jaden Higgins you drafted in the 2nd round with their first pick. Ariante Ursary, who potentially could start. I don't know if he does, but that's a potential starter. Jalen Noel, who fell to the 3rd round, very shifty. Opposite side of Jaden Higgins at Iowa State. That's a good fit. 3, Jalen Smith, that's 4. Woody Marks, that's 5. And even Jalen Reed, who probably won't start. But why not get all the Jalens? Jalen Noel, Jalen Smith, and Jalen Reed. It just gets confusing sometimes when you're looking at the drafts and who was specifically drafted. Jalen Noel, wide receiver from Iowa State. Jalen Smith, cornerback. And then Jalen Reed, safety from Penn State. So Jalen Smith, USC cornerback, but he has the potential to start as well. So again, there's so many things to love from the Texans in their draft, and it really does stand out to me. And I ask you guys, do you think they sign anybody in terms of the glaring holes that are on the team? Because there really aren't any holes, right? You look at the offense, you got Stroud, Mixon, Collins, Kirk. Tank Dell won't be there, but you got Higgins, Noel, Watson, Berrios, Hutchinson, so much depth at wide receiver, and that's going to help so much because you had a team last year where Stroud didn't trust any of his wide receivers. So that's the biggest thing that I want to highlight from the draft is that you get so much wide receiver depth, and that's going to help C.J. Stroud immensely, especially in a new offense with Nick Caley and a great running back room now in Joe Mixon and Woody Marks. But is there anything that stands out on the defensive side? Will Anderson, maybe you sign another defensive tackle for Sheldon Rankins. You did, however, pick up the defensive tackle from Rutgers in terms of Hamilton. So, again, that was a decent pick. I mentioned Luke Lackey, the other 7th-round pick we had. But, again, like, looking at this team, there really isn't anything that's like, we need that kind of, like, most of the time going into the new season, especially Texans fans, I feel can relate to this. There's always one position that you're like, yeah, I wish we had more of that. But honestly, looking at the starters in terms of the depth chart, obviously this is the unofficial depth chart because we haven't had training camp yet. The draft just ended. But, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Even on the defensive side, there aren't any guys that I'm like, you know what, I want to give him a shot. Maybe Matt Judon, rush off the outside, maybe get a little more depth to the defensive line. But you have Will Anderson, you have Daniel Hunter. Those guys are probably going to play 90, 100% of the time in terms of the snaps that they get, right? So it's a little bit, I wouldn't say confusing, but it's like, what do you want to do if you want to sign any free agents? And that's where I look at the free agency market, and it's like, realistically, this is the first year in a while where we see the Texans kind of have a complete roster. You have your franchise quarterback in C.J. Stroud. You have your star running back maybe on his waning years, but Joe Mixon still has a couple years left in the tank. Yes, you just drafted Woody Marks. Great pick in the 4th round. So that's what you love to see. Nico Collins. Now you have Jaden Higgins on the other side. Jalen Noel in the slot. Christian Kirk. Maybe he'll start the season. We'll have to see. But, I mean, it was just an awesome draft. Dalton Schultz. That's probably the weaker position as tight end, but you don't have any tight ends you're going to go sign. Dalton Schultz is fine. Brevin Jordan's coming back. Cade Stover, he was a beast last year until he got hurt. Irv Smith, why not re-sign him for depth? The amount of blocking tight ends you have, Brevin Jordan more of a receiving guy, but Cade Stover, absolute stud. You could put him at fullback if you wanted to. Dalton Schultz, he can block, he could catch. Brevin Jordan, good. He's not the best blocker, but he could catch. He could still block, though. Again, now you get Luke Lackey to bring in, who the Texans undervalued at not really expecting him to be a 7th-round pick on the board. But realistically, I'm thinking about free agency after the Robert Woods signing, and I'm just like, realistically, the Texans are set for this season. I mean, look at the depth chart, guys. It's kind of just crazy to me, eye-popping. And I want to note, and we'll probably do a whole video breaking down this offense, but from what happened last year with the Texans, everyone was hyping this team up. C.J. Stroud had a great rookie season. The Texans went to the playoffs. And then in the offseason, they get Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, the Texans are the team to watch. They're going to do all these crazy things. And then, of course, when you hype teams up in the NFL, they go to perform the lowest of standards, and you don't get anything that you think out of anything, if that even makes sense. But always the teams that get hyped up, for some odd reason, they never deliver in terms of their performance. Now, the Texans, they did have an underwhelming season. C.J. Stroud did not play up the standard because of, one, the way the offense was ran with Bobby Slowick. 2, the amount of receivers that just continuously got hurt. Nico Collins was out 4 weeks with a hamstring injury. Tank Dell, we all saw what happened with his knee injury in the Chiefs game. And then your starting receiving room for a while was Nico Collins. And then on the other side, it was John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, Robert Woods. Like, you cannot trust those guys. And that's why I love in the draft that you got Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, on top of going out and getting Christian Kirk in free agency, getting Justin Watson, getting Braxton Berrios, to understand that even if everything goes wrong in the receiver room, you still have guys to replenish. And that's the thing you have to love about this team is, look at this team. I mean, realistically, there are no holes. I know a lot of people have speculations on can the offensive line operate. And honestly, I'm about to do a full breakdown of the offensive line too, because realistically, it can't be any worse than it was last year. Let's be completely honest. Yes, Cam Robinson is not better than Laremy Tunsil, but Tunsil was a big problem as well in terms of his penalties. He had so many times where he jumped the snap, and he had so many other times where he's just doing his job, but nobody else is doing theirs. So you go get Cam Robinson, you make a trade, and I'm not saying Tunsil was bad by any means, but it was a good trade to get rid of that contract, to get rid of, he's getting older. You get, not younger, but you get Cam Robinson, a veteran. You go out and draft Ursary for the future to be your blindside left tackle. Great move by Caserio. Now, hopefully he pans out and in the right aspect. Again, he's sitting behind a veteran, so hopefully he can learn. He's 6'6". He did great at Minnesota. But again, you are underestimating this offensive line because you don't know what it can do. And that's the biggest thing is they can actually show up, play really well. You have Cam Robinson. Again, nothing special, but Laken Tomlinson, again, a veteran, Jarrett Patterson, Juice Scruggs. But again, we didn't expect the offensive line to be as bad as it was last year, with Shaq Mason letting up double-digit sacks. And if you just have guys that do their job, and even if they're veterans, they may not be anything flashy, but all they have to do is do their job. And the one thing we can note is that every single one of these guys on the line can run block very well. The offensive line in the starting category looks a little bit weird because Titus Howard is listed as tackle. He will play guard, and he will play on the opposite side of Tomlinson with Juice Scruggs behind. So Titus Howard will be the right guard. Lakin Tomlinson will be the left guard. Juice Scruggs will be the backup to one of those two, and Ed Ingram as well. So do you want more depth at offensive guard? Or you're definitely not re-signing Shaq Mason. That guy, oh man, he had a bad season last year. But again, that's where I look at C.J. Stroud was the second most sacked quarterback last year. Half of the reason was because we were 3rd and 8 almost every single drive, and Stroud had to make something happen out of nothing. And when you have 3rd and 8 down efficiency and you're holding onto the ball for 5 seconds, yes, you're probably going to get sacked more often than not. So you get the offensive mind out of there that's creating these long, drawn-up processing plays, and you bring in somebody who is a run-heavy offense in L.A., and that's the thing. It's going to look a lot better for 2025. The offense is not going to be what it was last year. You have so many wide receivers to look forward to, man. I mean, this is incredible. So this offense right now is going to shock the world. And that's where I get back to my point about how everyone was hyping the offense up in 2024. This is going to be a great playoff team. Now everyone's not talking about the Texans draft. Everyone's like, why didn't they draft offensive line? They don't need to draft offensive line. Yes, you can ridicule me in the comments. Oh, they're just veterans. You don't need anybody flashy to play offensive line. Just do their job. Do a good enough job to where you can hold up for, and that's the thing, bad offensive lines, this is not a bad offensive line. It's a very solid offensive line. There's not a glaring hole. It's okay. And that's fine when you get the ball out of your hands in 3-4 seconds, when you have a good solid run game in Joe Mixon and Woody Marks. And you might not have a solid run game if you don't have a good offensive line, but all those guys can run block. And look at the tight end room. Schultz, Stover, Lackey, Irv Smith. I didn't say Brevin Jordan because he's not a blocker, but all those guys can run block extremely well. Not saying Jordan can't, but he's probably one of the lesser guys that can run block, if you understand what I mean. Stover's a beast in the run game. But yeah, put him at fullback. I don't even care. But looking at this team, it's going to be a lot better than it was last year. And kind of to make my point, they're not going to go sign any players most likely, unless it's like undrafted free agents for depth and just trying to see who can make the roster, see who can make the team, because you have so many depth at so many different positions that obviously, yes, you're going to have way too many guys in terms of who you need to cut to fill the rostered standard. But enough rambling for me today. It's been a lot of speculation about how the Texans have not drafted offensive linemen, and especially interior offensive linemen, which I don't think that is a must-need. It's a glaring hole. That's probably the only thing, is it may not be a glaring hole. It's probably the weakest part of our team, but every position has been filled with a veteran who is somewhat capable and somewhat conscious enough to play that position. Now, of course, obviously things can go wrong. I thought Shaq Mason could be a solid veteran, and he gives up double-digit sacks. But that's the thing we're looking at for this team is there any problems? From what I can see, it looks like this is a playoff caliber team. The schedule is going to be hard, but expect this to be a much more competitive Houston Texans team, at least from my perspective. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Will the Texans sign anybody? It will be interesting to look for, but I think we're dead set on training camp. It's going to be some fun, and I'm ready to see what this offense has to do with the 2 running backs and the 2 receivers from Iowa State. So it's going to be a lot of fun, but thank you everyone so much for watching. Again, hit that sub button if you're new. Appreciate everyone watching. Drop your comments down below, and we'll catch you in the next video.